Now to Major League Baseball, where the league has decided to move the All-Star game from Atlanta in light of the recent voting legislation the state of Georgia signed into law. Supporters of the legislation say the law will boost confidence in the integrity of elections, while critics say the law will suppress the vote and disproportionately affect minorities. Some are even saying the law is bringing back the Jim Crow era. All right, Drink, over to you. Did baseball make the right decision?
I'm gonna say no. Listen, please don't hit me with the Uncle Tom talk when I get done with this, but I just gotta keep it real. Let's say, for argument's sake, that the bill that was presented was running a parallel with the Jim Crow era. Let's say that. I don't believe it is at all because I can still go vote without getting my ass beat. But okay, let's say it is. Why would baseball be the sport to make this deal with? I don't. Why would baseball be the sport to make this point with? If you break down the demographic of baseball, right? If you're talking about African American, Jim Crow, legitimately. So we're talking about African Americans, no other race. That percentage is significantly lower than the NBA and the NFL. If this is what it's about, I don't understand why this point wouldn't be made with those sports. Not to say it hasn't been made, but why it wouldn't be made with those sports. Not only that, we're talking about Atlanta. Most African Americans would consider Atlanta as the capital for black entrepreneurship, the capital for black innovation, the capital for, black capitalism, right? That's how we look at Atlanta. We don't look at California like that. We don't look at New York like that. We don't. Atlanta is like, if you go to Atlanta, you see a lot of stuff for like that we, as a community, like they didn't build Atlanta to be like the capital for black education, wealth, future, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it, right? And to move this game out of Atlanta for the fact of this bill being signed is a little questionable. I'm not gonna say it's a good decision. I mean, I'm not mad at the MLB if they want to put their foot down. At the end of the day, they can do whatever they want to do with their product. It is their product at the end of the day. So if they want to go play it over in New Zealand, it's the stupidest thing I ever heard, but it's their product to do it with, right? So it's their product. But I know a lot of this, you got a lot of Georgia-based companies that's behind this move. The Deltas, the Coca-Colas, the other moves. And I want to say this. I know right now we're talking about the MLB All-Star Game, but I done heard this impact other stuff. For instance, college football, the SEC championship get played in Atlanta. Ooh. I hear they might consider moving that. The Chick-fil-A kickoff game happens in Atlanta. They talking about moving that as well.
Yeah.
They, Georgia Tech, Georgia. Those are big schools that they're like, well, I don't know, we want to support. I'm just, it's like, you got to think about this. You really got to think about this. Is the squeeze worth the juice? Or is the juice worth the squeeze? I'm sorry. Is the juice worth the squeeze? And I don't know. Right now, it seems like a good idea. I don't know. I don't know. Like you said, you told me something very, very educational not too long ago. You said, this bill is 95 pages. Who in the hell just sitting here reading this bill? I, for one, I'm not sitting here reading no 95-page bill. That's just not me. But if you do sit down and read the bill, I think you might get a different understanding of what's going on instead of just following the media, following, these publications, following these broadcasts. You made a good point. You got to read for yourself sometimes. You have to sit down and read for yourself. If you can't read, go up there with somebody else that can read and let them read it to you. I don't know, but you got to kind of do your own research with some of this stuff because it does seem a little outrageous. Now, what I do agree with all this disagreement is the transparency of it. It did seem like it happened kind of fast. It did seem like it happened in the lore of secrecy in like some, I don't know, some chamber, and everybody did not have a fair chance to voice their opinion on this bill. That I kind of agree with that. It does seem that way, but we have to be careful with the words we use, because, like you said, the Jim Crow era. I guarantee you, if you go talk to someone that was really in the Jim Crow era, and you say, "Oh, well, we feel like we're in the Jim Crow era because you can't you can't accept water at the polls, or you can't get ballots delivered to your house. They moved the ballot box from my corner because the COVID numbers are going down, and this is Jim Crow." Like, people, let's be real here. I might not know what the bill say, but I damn sure know what Jim Crow is. And let me just tell you this right now. It wasn't no showing up. You can go ask me. It wasn't showing up to the polls. Oh, I'm gonna vote for Joe Biden. Hey, get the hell out of here. That wasn't what it was. That wasn't that at all. It was, hey, you get the, hey, we finna burn your whole community down if we ever see your effing face again. You son of a gun. People getting shot on the street, and that's Jim Crow. It was real back then. So just because you don't like how something go down, you gotta watch how you throw around these terms, because it's like being an African American, being a black guy. Jim Crow wasn't nothing to mess with. Like, in real life, if I walked out in the street right now and some dude was like referencing something from Jim Crow in a negative manner, we about to get it in. That's just what it is. We about to get it in, because that's what Jim Crow was. That was a very bad time for African Americans in history. You know what I'm saying? Right after slavery, it's a very bad time. So we have to watch these terms. If you want to say it's unfair, if you want to say it's unjust, if you want to say it's inequality, okay, use all those words. I'm with that. But let's watch some of the terms we use, because this is not Jim Crow. Because my black self can go to the voting poll. I can vote. I'm assuming they take my vote, put it in and do what they do. I get my little I voted today sticker, and I'm gone. Whatever and I'm gonna say this: whatever requirement that they have for you to vote, I don't have a problem with. I can do whatever you want. An ID? I got that. I got that. You want the last four of my social security number? I got that.
Don't tell me you have an ID now.
Oh, I mean, I got a few of them. Like,
my God, that's advanced.
So, I don't, as this situation progresses, we'll see. But, that's my 2 cents on it as of now. Now, my opinion could change if I get more information that I think is damaging, or more information that helps the situation. But as of right now, that's how I see it. I'm going to turn it over to you. You actually read 95 pages of a bill. So I want to turn it over to you and let you express what you read, how you interpret it, and see if we can get some positive dialogue going from this bill instead of negative dialogue.
There's a lot of negative, and it's from all sides. I do want to say, though, I appreciate the position you took, not because it necessarily agrees with mine, but I want to say this: in issues such as this, I think it's being a black man as yourself and taking a sort of position that doesn't necessarily fall lockstep where it necessarily maybe should, due to the racial narratives that I think some people like to push in this country. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that, because I think it matters. And, I think there's something to be said for someone who can, despite knowing what someone may say, and because, there's one thing to take a position as someone who's not black, right, because it's easy to dismiss that person as a racist. But right, black people that don't necessarily fall 100% in line with the narratives, they get treated just as poorly. Right. And I don't want to gloss over that fact. I thought your position was thoughtful, articulate, and took into account everything we're dealing with. And I also want to say, Thank you for bringing the attention, me to the attention of that state representative that was arrested in the Capitol. I don't know what that was about, but I will say that's troubling because based on the just a little bit that I read, that seems to be a common practice. Just go watch the governor sign bills into law. So I don't know what all that was about. I also can't really speak to the process necessarily and the transparency of was the bill rushed. I don't know how long they've been working on this legislation. Was it done in secret? I don't know. What I do know is those lawmakers were elected by the people of Georgia in their respective districts or whatever you want to call it. The governor was elected by the people of Georgia. I know Stacey Abrams don't agree, but that's how it went down, unfortunately. So this legislation was passed by representatives who were elected by the people of Georgia. That's how it works. And I do want to say off the cuff, anyone who is out here using reckless language and bringing up Jim Crow in relation to this language, the first question they should be asked is, have you read the legislation? Have you read the law? That's the first question that should be asked. And if you haven't read the law and you're spreading that type of reckless, divisive language, you should be ashamed of yourself because you're not helping the country. This is one of the last things we need as a country. There's a lot of things we do need, but we don't need to continue to be divided along racial lines, which is anytime you're invoking, Jim Crow language, that's what you're doing. Because I read, as you say, I spent a little bit of last night. I spent a little bit this morning before the show. I read every page of this law. There's nothing close. There's nothing close. And for people, there's a lot of powerful people pushing this narrative too. And let me use this opportunity. I've never done this, but I'm going to let everyone know publicly that I am still a member of the United States Armed Forces. So I'm not going to name drop people because I'm not a free citizen. So I'm not going to name drop people, but you don't have to look very far to people who are pushing this narrative. But they should, like I say, they should be ashamed of themselves, and they are lying. They are lying to you. And the New York Times had an interesting article. I just want to pull up a couple things of it. One of the examples, they mentioned 16 different ways that this law restricts access to the ballot box. Some of them are just foolish. And the first one says voters will have less time to request absentee ballots. Georgia used to allow 180 days prior to an election for you to request an absentee ballot. They cut it down, 78 days. That's true. They cut the time down. I would say to the New York Times, why do you need half a year to request a ballot? You mean are you seriously telling me that, and we've also been told, this has been said, that this law will disproportionately affect the minority communities. So what you're saying is, in a roundabout way, you're saying white people can request ballots in 78 days. Black people can't, minorities can't. Who's really the racist? I would also tell you about voter ID. Georgia now, you have to have you have to be able to verify who you say you are if you request an absentee ballot. With one of the primary way that they're looking to do this is you have to write your driver's license number on, the form or the envelope or somewhere or another to verify who you are so they can match it up. If you don't have a driver's license, they have alternative means. Last four social security number, date of birth, all that to match you up against the voting records. And I just say, because a lot of people are pushing some wild things there, we're having discussions about vaccine passports. So we want vaccine passports, but we don't want voter ID. This law, in the end, nobody's suppressing anybody. This is about election integrity. It's called the Election Integrity Act of 2021. There are a lot of people, right or wrong, we don't know, that their confidence in the electoral process was shaken based off our most recent presidential election. Because of that, representatives, legislators, if you're in government, you have some sort of a responsibility, if you represent the majority of people in those states, to try to, if nothing else, hey, let's double check things. Let's do our due diligence to make sure there are no holes in the electoral process where we can have some fraud.
So
And have
okay, so let me slide in this quick. Let me present a question for you. Let me see which. Okay, I'm seeing. Let's say I'm 50-year-old, African American male. I have this heightened fear of COVID, so I like the convenience of not having to go to a poll. Right, I like being able to, like, I guess, do my ballot and drop it in a drop box. But they took that drop box. Like, why can't we still have the drop box? Because from some I heard, like, they want to remove some of the drop boxes and make it more centralized where everybody going to the same place. And I understand the convenience of it, right? And that might be the reason why they're saying, oh, they're doing this to the minorities because, the black community or whatever. Why can't we just keep that process of the drop boxes? What is the biggest benefit of sending everybody to the same place? If you adding in the COVID pandemic,
a lot of these like updates, or some of these, if you want to call them restrictions, but some of these new rules in regards to this new Georgia voting law, most of them are regarding absentee balloting, mail-in balloting. And remember, you have to remember, a lot of these new rules that were set in place for elections were because of the pandemic. I know there's a lot of people that continue to just wear a mask, and some of them are wearing 2 masks. Some might be wearing more masks than that. If you are vaccinated, though, the CDC has come out and said you're not carrying the virus. So take the mask off, live a little, and oh, by the way, next month, the general public will be available to get a vaccine. So these rules and these things that we did to make it easier for people to vote, make it safer, we can go back to some sort of normal elections. And the top doctor in the country, Mr. Fauci, he came out and said before the election, hey, you put on your mask, your social distance, it's safe to go vote in person. So if it was safe before we had a vaccine, it's probably safe to go now, or in November, or in the midterms next year. So I would say
we don't trust that vaccine. We don't trust that. Now what?
Another point. It's another point. You're not supposed to question it, though. You can't do that. So, I mean, I would just say they are cutting down and limiting the amount of drop boxes. But I would also say Georgia you don't have to have a reason at all to request an absentee ballot. Anybody can do it. You just have to prove you are who you say you are. You do have less time to do it, but I think 78 days is still more than ample time. I think 60 days is enough time. If you need 6 months to request a ballot, you're probably not serious about voting. You need that much. You need half a year to request a ballot. You're that busy, huh? Maybe you are. But if you want to vote, I want to figure it out. And this whole idea, this one big thing is getting pushed. People need to stop with this. They can't even give water to someone waiting in line. Well, number one, if you're worried about water and your line is that long, bring your own water. Bring your own water. But the thing that you have to remember is that they don't want political operatives coming up to people in line and saying, hey, wink, wink, old Joe sent you this water, from Delaware, nice and fresh. Just remember that when you go in there and, fill out your ballot, make sure you fill in the right bubble. That's called.
Thanks, Joe. Joe. I was a little parched.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You don't want, because that's interfering with the electoral process. You don't want people, and there's way worse that can go on than that. It's not just water. It could be like, I've heard stories of people being gifted gas cards. iPads. We can get crazy with it. Just that's people buying votes. And I believe they call it electioneering. We don't want that. And so to get to the main point of baseball, baseball had an opportunity here, and someone at some point is going to have to put their foot down and say enough with this nonsense. But baseball wasn't it. Baseball couldn't hold the line and stop some of this nonsense, because the idea that this is Jim Crow and Jim Eagle, Jim Crow on steroids, Jim Crow 2.0, all the just reckless devices language is just a bald-faced lie.
Okay, so with that said, is it the professional sports that's the problem, or is it big business? Because it's like one and the other, right? Like,
yeah,
I think the NBA, MLB, NFL, NHL, I think they most likely want to stand pat and say, I don't know, man. This don't seem like we should have to do all this for like this bill. But then when you got your major sponsors coming at you like, bro, we would take our billions of dollars away from you if you don't move this game.
That's not surprising, is it? We saw the same thing last year with the old Washington used to be, offensive name got renamed to the old football team. That's not a name, by the way. Blank birth certificate is what that is. But that's where it started. You had FedEx, who that's the name of the stadium in Landover, Maryland, FedEx Field or whatever. Right. FedEx was mad about it. Then you had Nike and Amazon pull the team merchandise from the online stores, so you couldn't buy nothing. It's the same thing. I mean, Coca-Cola, an Atlanta-based company, Delta Airlines, an Atlanta-based company,
So I guess that's my point. Because like you said something about MLB putting their foot down. You got to have a ground to put your foot down on. You know what I mean?
And obviously you feel a little bit less sure of putting your foot down when your wallet ain't as heavy as it was 24 hours ago, or you feel like your purse strings is getting attacked. And beyond that, and who's leaning on the corporations? Most likely the Democratic Party. That's my belief. So it's good to know who runs the country, but this is we can go two ways from here, and I'll take you this way first. Number one, it's an absolute shame for the city of Atlanta, because think about this. A big reason that we have the change in the federal government that we do have is based on the state of Georgia. You can throw Arizona. Arizona is probably the second state I would throw in there, but Georgia most importantly, because Georgia went Democratic in November, and then in January, Georgia, those 2 Senate seats went blue as well, put the Senate in a tie. Kamala Harris gets to cast the tie-breaking vote. So in all actuality, you can make an argument. We live in a one-party state right now. Republicans don't have a lot of control at the federal. They have very little influence in the federal government. So
but they exist. They're there.
Right. Sure.
They're there. Okay.
But Georgia, and not only Georgia, but think about which communities got Joe Biden over the finish line. That would happen to be Atlanta. That would be Fulton County. That would be DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, and Cobb County, that's where Truist Park, home of the Atlanta Braves, is, just outside the Beltway of North Atlanta. So what you're doing here by moving the All-Star game, because I know politically it looks like it's aimed at Brian Kemp, the governor, and the Republican-controlled state legislature. It looks like who you're attacking. But the people that will pay the price are the people of Atlanta. Because if you look at the All-Star game and the economic impact that it has, the last 2 All-Star games have, brought in about $60 million in money. So who's suffering? Local business people, the people of Atlanta,
they got a new beautiful stadium that should be on display. Okay, back to your point with the counties, right? Do we know how those counties voted? Did they vote majority mail-in absentee, or did they go into the booth? Do we know how they voted?
I well, I don't know that information, but I do know the majority. If you look at the last presidential election, it's no secret that the majority of people that went to vote on election day voted for Donald Trump. The majority of people that voted by absentee or the mail-in way voted for Joe Biden. But that had to do with the fear around the pandemic. We got vaccines, people. We got 3 vaccines. Everybody is going to be pretty much eligible and will have the opportunity to get a vaccine if you want one next month. The next major election, the midterms next November, I hope to God by then we can take our masks off and go vote and go to a restaurant and go to a movie and go to an Atlanta Braves game if we so choose to, without having to 6 feet and I got to put a mask on and, maybe I have to buy one of them nose masks so I can still eat it. Just all this nonsense that we don't have to do anymore. And it really begs the question. I'd like to know if some people in positions of power do they even want this pandemic to end? Because this pandemic has benefited people in positions of power who in some cases, I'm not sure they're interested in giving up that power. But the other point is this. Where does it end? Because baseball would have been Major League Baseball would have been a great place to draw the line. All you have to do, Major League Baseball, read the law, say all this stuff about Jim Crow and that it's racist and it's going to hurt the minority community. We don't see that. It's not in here. Let's point you to some actual Jim Crow laws. Georgia used to have a law where it shall be unlawful for a white person to marry anyone except another white person. That's an actual Jim Crow law. Restaurants, all persons licensed to conduct a restaurant. You either got to serve white people exclusively or colored people exclusively. These are actual Jim Crow laws. There is nothing even close to that, anything in this new legislation Georgia just passed on March 25th. How about burial? You can't. There was even segregation in death before the civil rights legislation in the 60s. The officer in charge shall not bury or allowed to be buried any colored persons upon grounds set apart or used for the burial of white persons. Actual Jim Crow legislation. So I'm telling you, people that are invoking this racial, divisive, and it's reckless, this reckless rhetoric, that they're killing this country. And I've said this a couple of times. These double standards, they're gonna be the end of us. People talk about the next, the 2 global powers, rising up against either in China and the United States. China doesn't have to do a thing. We're doing it to ourselves right now. And the last thing about, baseball would have been a great time to draw the line. And those demographics of the actual baseball players they don't match the NBA or the NFL. I don't think that means a whole lot because I think we get so caught up on race that, and everything's not about race. But where does it end now? Because you mentioned it. Really, the SEC championship game, we got to move that. Chick-fil-A opening kickoff game or whatever. What about the universities? Hey, Georgia Tech, you got to get out of Georgia. But you know what's interesting about that? I guess should we cancel the entire SEC now? Every state in the SEC is a red state. More of this legislation is coming. I'm telling you, more of this legislation is coming. So I would like to know, where does it end? And I told you, and I asked you this question before we got on the air. What about the Braves? What about the Falcons and Hawks? Do they move out of Georgia to protest?
I don't know.
Exactly. Where does it end?
It can happen. I would say this though. I don't think all the states. Let's say Alabama, for example, my state. I don't think we're gonna have that problem. I'm just to be honest with you. Why? Because I think the biggest thing with Georgia was, like you said, in December you was red, by January you was blue. All because, a different way of voting. All because of innovation. We voted differently. Alabama was red throughout. Why do they need to change anything? Mississippi was red throughout. Why do they need to change anything? Florida was, they was hot and cold, but that's Florida. You always get that with Florida. My point is, I don't think every red state is going to deal with this. I think the states that's going to deal with this the most are the states that was you just didn't know. Like, it was no consistency in the vote.
Yep.
Georgia, Arizona, maybe Michigan. Like, states like that where it just was like flopping all over the place.
You're talking about swing states.
Swing states, right? That just flopped over, and that's where the accusations came out. Voters fraud, all that, through those states. If I'm a state that didn't get bothered, why would I change? Like you say, if it's not broke, what am I trying to fix? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if it'll stretch throughout. I do agree with you. It will be more states. I just don't know if it'll be those staunch red states. I don't see why they would do anything. They don't need to. We know, like, I'm 35 years old, from Alabama. That joint been red since I've known what red and blue mean. I don't see it changing no time soon. So I don't know. I would like to see that, though. That is interesting.
And I do. Let me throw this in here. Another point, because the New York Times, they're a little upset because this law does give the state more control over, the localities, the counties, in the way they run their elections. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's upset with that is a liberal, doesn't have a leg to stand on, because guess what? House Resolution number 1, which is like the going to be a big deal if they can get that passed. That is exactly what the federal government wants to do. They want control in all the state elections. So you can't be upset.
Hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off. You just went over my head. What are we talking about? House Resolution number 1.
I believe House Resolution number 1, as far the way I understand it, is I think it's the first law that was proposed in this new Congress. And one of the things it will do is it will give the federal government control of all the elections, all the state elections. So what I'm getting at is people that are upset that the state of Georgia wants more control of their state elections. You can't be mad at that, because the federal government right now is looking to do the same thing. The federal government wants to nationalize elections. That's a big problem. We live in a system of federalism. Yes, we have a national government, but the national government can only do so much because we have states. And we should probably leave it the way it is, because I think it's one of the things, if you believe in anything, the founding principles, blah, blah, and I know everyone was racist. I get all of it. But one of the things about it was they were concerned about a federal government that had too much power, which is why they reserved a lot of the powers to the states. Democrats don't like that. They want all the control. And let me just throw this in there as well, because I thought Brian Kemp had some interesting things to say about this legislation. It's a warning. Everyone should be concerned, because as we talked about with the SEC championship games and all those other things, because we don't know where it is. If this legislation is political and this legislation is racist and all the rest of it, everyone should be concerned in this country, because I don't know if there is a limit now. I don't know if there is. Everyone should be concerned.
I got one more thing before we close this out. I just wanted to be clear for the listeners and the watchers of this segment. Myself and Jay, we have our views, and I don't want anyone to watch this and think either one of us are trying to push our political views. I try to keep my political view to myself. Jay, he's a very proficient professional with keeping his political views within realm. I mean, it's a free country. We can talk if we want. We don't take it too far, but I just want people to know we're not trying to turn this into a politics show. But this subject was wrapped around politics. It was wrapped around baseball and politics. We're not trying to force our views on you. We just want you to know this is going on. I think this was a very good segment. It did bring something different than the normal sports talk that we do. And I think this is if you're a resident of Georgia, this segment should have been of some interest to you, because it is a deal here. But I just want to be clear that we're not forcing our opinions on anyone. We just stating what we see. We stating what we read. We getting a better understanding, just like you are. So don't get offended and think we trying to take over the world or some craziness with the politics. We just expressing, this situation.
And last thing I'll say, really the last thing, read the law. That's all I would ask. Read the law, decide for yourself.